Anthony Blinken on Wednesday said that the US is ready to adjust and adapt according to the conditions on the battleground, that it would lead to an escalation between NATO and Russia and then possibly to World War III.
Major warnings coming out about World War III, and this is all surrounding the United States, Russia, NATO, and Ukraine. And let me know your thoughts. Are we going to be entering into World War III? Yes, or do you think no? Or there's a lot of people saying we've already started World War III. We don't realize it. It just has not yet been officially announced. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, but take a look at the latest headlines coming out in just the past 24 hours. Putin remarks shows World War III has crept up, says a Russian newspaper. And again, this just coming out today, and this one coming out yesterday. World War III brewing. Russia accuses NATO of practicing nuclear strikes on country. B-52 spotted. I'm going to be sharing with you that. And also, take a look at this. We will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine, the president said soon after Russia's invasion in spring of 2022. So when it first started, they said a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia is World War III and something we must strive to prevent. But here we are today. I'm going to be sharing with you the video footage in the last 24 hours of U.S. Secretary Anthony Blinken saying it is time for the United States to consider allowing Ukraine to use U.S. weapons and Western weapons to attack Russia, which Russia is saying will equate to an escalated conflict, and many are saying World War III. Now, I actually just shared with you how circulating around the news media outlets right now is that potential World War III could be sparked between the U.S., China, and Taiwan, with the conflict happening in the Pacific. We're hearing China will be soon attacking Taiwan, and when they do, the United States, we're hearing, will support them. China furious over this, and China saying we have cyber attackers ready to do direct attacks against infrastructure systems for the United States. You can expect these cyber attacks when that war begins, and you can also potentially expect that to become World War III as well. So a lot of conflict taking place right now. Now, in addition to that, in the next 6 months, a huge financial opportunity is going to be coming up, and today's video sponsor is going to be helping you out directly with this, but more on that later on in the video. But let's go ahead and dive right in. And before we do me a quick favor. If you appreciate the updates, don't forget, take a quick second, hit that like button for me. Helps out the channel a ton. Thank you so much. And also hit subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. Why not? And with that being said, though, let's go ahead and get you caught up on the latest in the last 24 hours of the conflicts taking place around the world. But first, let's talk about a massive opportunity that's right around the corner. Now, on April 19th of 2024, we saw Bitcoin have its 4-year halving cycle. Now, historically, roughly about 6 months after that halving cycle, we see the prices of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency go up substantially. Now, currently, the value of Bitcoin is about $69,000 per coin. So if history repeats itself within the next 6 months, many are anticipating that Bitcoin's value could be worth as much as $300,000 per coin. Now, if you want to capitalize on this potential opportunity before Bitcoin and crypto begin to take off in price in the next 6 months, well, there's an innovative company that's putting a new spin on an old investment account that can help you out with that, and that is iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital is the #1 crypto IRA retirement platform. Simply put, their innovative solution allows you to invest in cryptocurrency with a retirement account, including a Roth IRA, giving you that tax shelter effect. So if you want to hold your Bitcoin or crypto for the long haul, iTrust Capital will help you avoid a monster tax bill as your coins appreciate. And you can roll over existing retirement accounts as well. So if you want to diversify your portfolio into cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, a rollover might be your ticket. iTrust Capital has completed over $8.7 billion in transactions, helping over 200,000 investment clients. So click the link below to see how iTrust Capital can help you get started with your crypto investments today.
Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is in Prague this morning as part of a multi-day meeting with NATO foreign ministers. Earlier at a press conference with the president of Moldova, Blinken made headlines by leaving the door open to a key shift in U.S. policy, allowing Ukraine to fire American weapons in a Russian Federation territory.
We haven't encouraged or enabled strikes outside of Ukraine. Ukraine, as I've said before, has to make its own decisions about the best way to effectively.
For the latest, let's go to Claudio Vanga. Good morning, Claudio. Why are these remarks significant?
Good morning, Francis. Well, even just the idea that the United States would allow Ukraine to use American-made weapons to attack Russia was completely unthinkable up to 2 years ago at the start of the war, when President Biden continued or repeatedly asked Zelensky not to do that for fear that it would lead to an escalation between NATO and Russia and then possibly to World War III. But nowadays, the U.S. administration is at least being very careful about that, or cautious, because you've got John Kirby, the spokesperson spokesperson to the National Security Council saying that there is no change in that policy. But then, as you heard, Anthony Blinken on Wednesday said that the U.S. is ready to adjust and adapt according to the conditions on the battleground. And the conditions on the battleground right now is that Ukraine is finding it very difficult to fend off Russia's attacks. Now, the question is, how will Russia react? Well, on Tuesday, Vladimir Putin told reporters constant escalation can lead to serious consequences in Europe. How will the United States behave, bearing in mind our parity in the field of strategic weapons? And of course, Francis, with that, is referring also to nuclear weapons. Back to you, Francis.
Now, as always, link in the description below to this article that just came out today that says Putin remarks shows World War III has crept up. Russian newspaper. Now, the article says a third world war has crept up unnoticed. A prominent Russian newspaper has said after Russian President Vladimir Putin warned long-range strikes launched into Russia from Ukraine would pull NATO countries closer to direct confrontation with Moscow. And we're hearing, as I mentioned, Poland and other NATO nations giving the green light for Ukraine to do so. And we're also hearing the U.S., who has been the biggest opponent of this, now saying they're taking it into consideration. More than 2 years of full-scale fighting in Ukraine has brought the possibility of another global conflict to the fore. NATO countries are eager to tamp down on the possibility of the violence spreading beyond the country's border. When providing military aid and weapons to Ukraine, they have been clear that they are assisting Kiev's defense against Moscow's forces not being a part of the war. However, this hasn't prevented the hostilities from becoming Europe's largest armed conflict since World War II. NATO nations have increasingly come out in favor of permitting Ukraine to use Western-supplied weapon systems to strike into internationally recognized Russian territory. The U.S., the most vocal opponent of Western weapons reaching beyond Ukraine's border, has indicated this week that it may adapt and adjust its policies, but has not yet lifted its restrictions on Kiev. Earlier this week, Russian President Vladimir Putin said NATO countries, especially the ones based in Europe, particularly in small European countries, should be fully aware of what is at stake by allowing Ukraine to strike inside Russia with donated weapons. They should keep in mind that theirs are small and densely populated countries, which is a factor to reckon with before they start talking about striking deep into the Russian territories. The Russian leader said this constant escalation can lead to serious consequences. So he's saying, keep in mind, your nations are small and densely populated, which essentially is a threat of potential missiles hitting those nations. It is another step toward a serious conflict in Europe, toward a global conflict, Putin said, adding long-range strikes from Ukraine were impossible without NATO-facilitated space reconnaissance, blaming NATO directly. Russia's leader issued a completely unambiguous ultimatum with his remarks, a writer for a Russian daily newspaper claimed, adding that they hope that Western countries would, quote, not think that he is bluffing. The piece also appeared on the front page of the newspaper's print edition. Now, shortly after Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February of 2022, Kiev warned that should Ukraine fall to Russian forces, other nations in Europe will be next on Russia's hit list in what would be a wider European war. If Ukraine will not stand, Europe will not stand. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, if we will fall, you will fall. Earlier this year, Putin said everything is possible when discussing whether a wider war could break out between Russia and Western countries backing Ukraine. The globe is one step away from a full-scale World War III, Putin said back in mid-March. Belarus leader Alexander Lukashenko, one of Putin's most steadfast allies, warned that the world has again come to the brink of the abyss. There are grounds for concerns about a third world war, he added. Now, in addition to that, in the last 24 hours, we've heard that Russia is claiming that NATO is escalating tensions, provoking potential attacks that could lead to World War III. Take a look at this article coming out in just the past 24 hours as well. World War III brewing. Russia accuses NATO of practicing nuclear strikes on the country. B-52 spotted. And this one says that the first deputy director and head of Russia's Federal Security Services, or FSB, Border Services, has accused NATO of gearing up for potential nuclear strikes on Russian soil. You can see here from Sprinter Factory, an American B-52H bomber with the call sign Barth 22 is now flying over the Baltic Sea. And it says, adding to the escalating situation, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev on May 26th issued a chilling warning to the United States and to Poland. So this was just a couple days ago, asserting that if the USA destroyed Russian positions in Ukraine, that it would start World War III. So let me know your thoughts. Are we going to be seeing Ukraine using U.S. and NATO weapons to attack Russia? Will this escalate? Will Russia then retaliate against these nations that are sending these weapons to Ukraine? Well, take a look at this. Ukraine NATO allies urge Joe Biden to drop World War III red line. This one actually coming out in the last 24 hours as well. And it says momentum is growing among NATO allies to allow Ukraine to fire Western weapons at military targets inside Russian borders, a step that the White House has staunchly opposed for fear of Moscow's war on its neighbors broadening into a direct clash with the Western allies. Russia's new cross-border offensive into Ukraine's northeastern region has left Kiev reeling, with defending forces unable to use advanced NATO arms to target the vital supply lines supporting the evolving attack. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is reportedly among those pushing the president to loosen the restrictions on Ukraine that have for more than 2 years limited its use of Western weapons to within occupied Ukrainian territory. President Volodymyr Zelensky told the New York Times last week that constraints have given Moscow a huge advantage. We have weapons, but we cannot use them against Russia until they cross the border. We couldn't strike, and that's why we couldn't prevent this attack. That's why we lost some villages and some territories, and we've lost soldiers and civilians. This is ridiculous. French President Emmanuel Macron, long at the forefront of NATO states pushing for more assertive action in Ukraine, also said on Tuesday that the alliance must allow Kiev to neutralize the military sites from which the missiles are fired, but not other civilians or military targets. We're not being escalatory by doing this, he said. Speaking alongside him with the German Chancellor, Scholz was characteristically cautious, saying any Ukrainian use of Western weapons must always be within the framework of the international law. Biden has broadly opposed any perceived escalation in Ukraine, his administration pushing back on Ukrainian drone strikes inside of Russia, flatly refusing permission for Ukraine to use American weapons inside of the Russian borders, and dismissing the potential of NATO boots on the ground in Ukraine. We will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine, the president said. A direct confrontation between NATO and Russia will equal World War III, and that is something that we are striving to prevent. So reports coming out of tensions increasing with Russia and the United States, NATO, Ukraine, and also with the United States, China, and Taiwan. Let me know your thoughts. Are we going to be seeing one of these escalating here very soon that could potentially lead to World War III? Well, whatever unfolds, you guys, I will continue to keep you up to date here on the channel. Now, to get the latest as to what's been unfolding in the Pacific with China, Taiwan, and the United States, and potential attacks we're hearing that could be coming to U.S. infrastructure systems, check out this video right here next, as I covered it in detail for you. I've got the video footage, the latest articles, so that way you know exactly what is going on. But again, that is the latest, and I'll keep you up to speed as more information comes out. And again, thank you for joining me. If you made it this far, I'll catch you in the next video. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.